Hello and welcome back to the Insight on a No Ratings pod. Slightly different one for you today because we're going outside of the Premier League, and I think people might say I've deliberately done this because Liverpool lost against Newcastle, but we've done a lot of Liverpool, and Atleti are playing Barcelona in a title decider in La Liga. So me and Pythag are hopping on as usual. Very quickly, Pythag, what's your immediate takeaway from the game?
I just felt like Atletico Madrid threw away the game. Like if you look at the actual XG, I think Barca was still outscored by Atleti, but it wasn't really a high scoring game in terms of XG. It was one of those typical games where Atletico Madrid very tight, 5-4-1 almost off the ball, very difficult to play through. Barcelona were looking more like an Arsenal where, a lot of control of possession, 66% possession, pinging the ball out wide to Yamal, but he kept cutting in into traffic and then ran the outside. There wasn't really any overlap from that side. And then on the opposite side, there was a lot of burden on Balde as an isolated left wing back to try and do everything from that side. But Atletico just felt comfortable throughout pretty much most of the game until that crazy period at the end of the game, which we'll talk about in more detail. But ultimately, Atletico Madrid will feel like they threw it away.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a trend with Atletico. I won't talk about this tweet that went viral this week from myself, but if you go and read that tweet, you'll see people were killing me for having my opinion on Diego Simeone and Atleti being like this underdog team all the time. And I think we're going to talk about substitutions and we're going to talk about what Barca did to win this game. But that point you just made there, like that crazy period, Atleti just lost their heads basically. This idea that they're so like well balanced and so clever. Like they're clever because they s house their way a lot of the times, and that's absolutely fine. But this was not clever. The result against Madrid midweek was not clever. It's stupid. They lose control. They become negative, and like they was sleepwalk into a loss effectively. When I was watching that, I was thinking the commentator said, "Oh, but Atleti have got a great record of late goals against Barca." And I thought, "There's no chance in this game they score a goal they deserve. Barca are definitely going to score." And then lo and behold, Yamal goes and scores that goal.
I think with Atletico Madrid, we have to realize that there's no Godin level defender within this setup.
Mm.
And if you look at some of their big matches this year, there's been a lot of goals conceded. If anything, I've been more impressed with Atletico more from a in possession perspective because I think Simeone's definitely recovered that vibe of Atletico Madrid being very fast in terms of transition, popping off 1-2s, getting really aggressively high up the pitch once they've got possession, and they look like they can score against anyone. Having said that, in this particular game, I wasn't that overly impressed with them in possession in terms of consistently getting forward. But the second goal was impressive, not going to lie. Really good football for Salah to score his goal. So, again, that was that little passage of play which has definitely typified Atletico Madrid's growth again this season from a possession perspective. But defensively, yeah, I felt like they did well, but it's like you said, psychologically, it always feels like there's an error, and once that error comes in, the floodgates will open. So I don't think they've like 10 years ago that level.
Mm. I think we'll come to, I think, what you believe is the key areas to where this game was decided. I actually agree with you, but I want to very quickly talk about Lewandowski because I think when he first went to Barca, if you remember, people said he was clunky and frustrating to watch, and I completely understand that. But I think he does things in games that people don't really account for. He had a moment where he was fired into his feet by Pedri, flicked it up with his right foot, and tried to volley it in with his left foot. It went 5-6 yards over, and I think he was pinning Lenormand or Clement Longley. And the point you make there about these top level defenders, Diego Godin, that doesn't phase him. The next tackle is going to be bang. I'm pretty sure it happened before the goal now that come to think of it, because the goal actually comes from him getting it fired into his chest at the edge of the box. He takes it down, manages to find half a yard and puts it in the box. I mean, it's such a good goal. But the fact that a big striker's dominating that part of the pitch and the defender's touch tight, like as close as he could possibly
Mhm.
be, I think we have to praise that style because I think that's a dying art in this game. But I think before we start,
It's a dying art, but it's an art that very much needs to be recovered because I put a tweet out, I think, after last round of Champions League where I said this is the reason why Gyökeres, Isak, Seshko, these type of players are so highly sought after at the moment because teams these days, once they're in that low block, they're very comfortable in that low block because if you're just a possession team with no real presence up front and you're just relying on your wingers, inverted wingers are just going to keep coming into traffic. So that's not the way to break open a low block. Your number 9 is the key to breaking that low block. And we saw Barca struggling all game until once Lewandowski's scored that goal, that psychologically put fear into the Atletico Madrid defense. It's made the game suddenly a bit more open, a bit more looser. Suddenly spaces are popping up where you don't expect it. And then the game just turned on its head from there.
Yeah, and I think the space point is quite important here because what I also felt was Atletico were naive in central areas. Ferran Torres came on and made a huge difference, and he's got quite a funny. He almost became like a bit of a meme player, but I think he's found his feet at Barca definitely in recent times. But what they stopped doing, and I think teams do this when you become negative. You know, when you sit with a back five
Hmm.
and you sort of just let third man runs happen because you're going, oh, centre back, you pick him up. But because you're like right back to the first point you said there, these centre backs aren't top level centre backs. So Ferran Torres' first goal comes from him just running off a midfielder. I want to say it was Gallagher, I could be wrong. And Gallagher sort of just passes him on, but the crosses come from like a deep right side position.
Yeah.
And it's just easy for Ferran Torres to almost like it's not intelligence, in my opinion. He just walks into the box and glances it in. And I think that area, Lewandowski scored from that area again. I think if you play a back five and there's not compactness between your deepest midfielder and the centre backs, that's going to happen. I think they almost threw the game in central areas, and there was also other chances in that area. And
Can I just
I
raise a
just
question here? How the
yeah,
hell has Longley had the career he's had? I mean,
good agent.
good agent or he's a member of the Illuminati because I have no idea how this guy's managed to play for the clubs that he's had. I think he's a
Yeah.
bang average player, and I'm not surprised that most of the goals sort of happen from that sort of left space of the defense. Let's just say.
Yeah. I think also this is going to speak to the point you're about to make about Lamine Yamal, who we have to talk about. I watched the first half and I was thinking, he's 17. Is he still 17? I think he's still
I
17,
think
isn't
so.
he?
Yeah.
Um, and he was just getting smashed every time he got the ball. And I was thinking, your body's gonna be knackered tomorrow morning, kid. Like you've just got bones at the moment, like barely any muscle. And he's just terrific. Like he just keeps going. And I think as a fullback, and at times there are two or three out there against him, he's so fearless. Like. And he tries to pull off ridiculous things. He's the Bruno Fernandes playing out wide, except he's at the elite level of it.
Yeah.
Um, but he needed help today. I think that was key. That he was getting battered and they weren't getting anything out of him. And the point that you were going to talk about, I think, is how Barca eventually won the game.
Yeah, so I think midway through the second half, I was asking for Flick to do something a bit different. Just to confuse that Atletico Madrid setup a little bit, and he moved Rafinha from sort of the left half space into the right half space. But then for that goal that you spoke about with Ferran Torres, he pulled out almost to the right wing where Yamal was. That created confusion for Atletico because they didn't know, should we go out to press Rafinha or are we just going out to press Yamal when he's in that position? And with them both going onto that flank at the same time, it just created that acre of space for him to get the ball, get his head up, and just ping that ball through for then Ferran Torres to make that run. And then we saw, like with someone like Balde going off, it that should have been a negative for Barca, but for some reason Pedri was then really driving down the left side of the pitch, and then Atletico were once again confused because they're like, okay, Pedri's running at us. What do we do here? He's not
Mm.
really a winger, but Pedri was just able to go down the line, put some left-footed crosses in as well. So suddenly the whole dynamic of Barca just looked a bit more fluid, a bit more unpredictable, and I think obviously the Lewandowski goal and it just created this chaos in the Atletico Madrid, which wasn't there from the first half because Barca were playing in such a structured manner that Atletico Madrid could almost see it coming from a mile off. And then in the last 20 minutes, it almost felt like a five-a-side where everyone's just going everywhere. And that really threw Atletico off. And this is what I mean about having a lack of an iconic defender at the heart of your backline because those are the type of situations where everything becomes chaotic. That's when the best defensive leaders they can see through the chaos and they can reorganize their defense in game. And I felt like Atletico Madrid lacked the leadership during that last 20 minutes of the game.
Especially when you play, and people are again going to criticize me for this, but they do play a more negative style of football in big games. It's just reality. And I think when you play that style of football, you can't have a non-elite centre back. You can't have a man that can't like Jimenez. I think has developed nicely, but he still has moments where he switches off. Longley we've spoken about. Lenormand again is like I don't look at either of them two and go, they can run a back line. Um, and obviously, I have my biases, so I'm going to ask you this question before we wrap. Do you think Atletico in this game, or maybe even just their DNA under Simeone, they become negative when they could potentially go for the kill?
I mean, I don't have any issue with the negativity, but absolutely agree with you that if you're playing that style of football, there's two things you need to have. You need to be good at penalties. For example, if we're talking Champions League, like because
Yeah.
you're playing in a style where everything's going to be tight, you're almost forcing the bigger team to go to a 0-0 and go into extra time. So if you're going to be that type of cheeky type of team, you've got to make sure you're so psychologically strong for penalty shootouts. And Atletico Madrid have always choked on that front.
Mm,
Secondly, if you're going to play this style of football, you've got to have really killer strikers, which, in fairness, he's managed to produce. There's been a lot of killer strikers that played for Atletico, and you need to have elite level centre backs because they've got to be able to organise that war machine, that defensive war machine, because that's the way that you're playing. If you're going to have substandard defenders that are protected within that setup, that works to a certain point, but there's always going to be a moment where they get leggy, they get tired, pressure comes on them, and then they're going to collapse. And I feel like I said, I think ever since Goldin's left Atletico, I don't think they've ever found a centre back that's matched up to him.
yeah, and I think also you have to factor in big games. You're going to play against elite forwards,
Yeah,
Rafinha, Yamal, Lewandowski today. Like he scored an unbelievable goal, but as I was saying earlier, like people don't account for the things he didn't get right, but the doubt it creates in a centre back and the audacity a player can have to try things can eventually put defenders in doubt. Clem Longley is a great example of someone who's not quite at the elite level. I don't want to kill him, but he got megsed on the far side by Yamal. And then he, like, as he turned to stop him, he was like scrambling, holding onto his shorts and his shirt. And after that, I was like, you're not going to get in a 1v1 with him again now this game. And so now Yamal knows that if he beats the left back and comes inside, like, you're toast basically.
yeah.
Um, and I think that is an issue for Atleti. And I do just think in this game, the changes he made, like I said, Gallagher being one change, and then shifting to this like back five without having like a holding midfielder in front is just criminal. You're basically playing a back five with a four in front, but the distance between them is too much, which is why Ferran Torres got in there once. Lewandowski scored from there once, had another chance. Rafinha got in there once, had a chance. Pedri had a chance. Like 5 or 6 chances happening in the central part of your pitch. And when you've put three centre backs, it just cannot happen. And I would just like to see that refined. I got nothing against defensive football.
But if you're going to
But yeah,
do it properly.
yeah, yeah, like you used to do it. Like you used to do it. Anyway, that's all we've got time for. So let us know if you want to see more Europe. I think we will do more European games because there's nothing left to play for in the Premier League unless Liverpool really choke from this
I'm getting
point.
bored of watching English games, to be honest with you. So yeah, this
Yeah,
is
yeah, like,
refreshing.
this is a really exciting game of football. Um, so yeah. Anyway, if you enjoy this, then let us know in the comments on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're watching this. And me and Pythag will see you in the next one.